Hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm Margaret, and here I share real-life stories from my friends at the nursing home. The night after his funeral, my daughter-in-law looked me in the eye and said, "It's time to talk about where you'll go next." Not, "How are you holding up, Edith?" Not, "We're so sorry this happened." Just that. As if 42 years of marriage ended and I became an inconvenience overnight. We were still sitting at the dinner table. My fork hadn't even reached my mouth. Chicken, dry, overcooked. Everything in me wanted to laugh or cry or flip the table. But I just swallowed the bite like gravel and waited for the rest. Angela, that's her name. 38, always too polished, even in grief. She sat across from me, her posture perfect, one manicured hand loosely holding her wineglass like a prop. My son, Mark, sat beside her, looking down, silent. Coward. She said it again, slow and calm, like she was discussing the weather. Now that he's gone, the house is ours. That was always the plan, right? I blinked. Excuse me? Mark cleared his throat, but still didn't meet my eyes. Mum, it's not personal. It's just, we all agreed the house would be ours after Dad passed. You said so. I didn't remember agreeing to anything. I looked between the two of them, feeling something thick and cold fill my chest. I said I would stay here, just for a few weeks. Angela smiled, the kind of smile that slices. That was 3 weeks ago. She paused. We've already started packing up your things. We can help move you this weekend. I'm not the type of woman who speaks loudly. I never have been. Not in 42 years of marriage. Not raising 2 boys. Not through layoffs, illnesses, the year we had to refinance the house, or the night I sat beside Richard in the ER, holding his hand as the machines screamed and his heart refused to keep going. I was 68 when he died. Richard and I married young. I was 26, he was 30. I taught part-time at the local school when the boys were little. Then I stayed home, cooked, kept the garden, made all the appointments, filed every tax form, answered every insurance call. I never had a big job title, but I knew everything about our life. He handled the money, yes, but I made the decisions. He called me his compass. Edie, he'd say, I wouldn't know what's north without you. We had our moments. No marriage lasts 4 decades without cracks. But we were solid, private, simple. Even when the boys moved away, Mark into tech, Danny to Oregon with his artist girlfriend, we stayed in our home. 2-story colonial in Ridgewood. Nothing flashy, just home. Then last year, Richard's chest started acting up again. He brushed it off. Indigestion, stress. But I knew. I told him to go in. He said, after the weekend. He never made it to Monday. When he passed, everything went quiet. Not just the house, me. People talk about grief like it's fire, all-consuming. But it wasn't fire. It was fog. Thick, heavy, a weight in the bones. Angela and Mark offered, or insisted really, that I come stay with them for a while. Just until things settle, Angela said, lips pursed in that tight way she smiles when she wants to look generous. I didn't argue. I couldn't think. I packed a small bag, left most of my clothes, took my wedding album. The house felt like a ghost museum anyway. I figured it would be easier to sort through it later. The night I arrived at their place, Angela showed me to the guest room and said, "Just let me know if the water pressure feels low. It's on the old line." I nodded, thanked her, sat on the bed. That first night, I slept in my clothes. This house is ours now. They said it gently, with soft voices and smooth words. But betrayal doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be real. Angela explained it like this. You and Richard always said the house would go to Mark. He's your eldest. It's only fair. Mark still wouldn't look at me. I realized something then. This wasn't sudden. They'd been talking about it, planning it, while I was grieving, while I was folding Richard's pajamas and rereading the last grocery list he'd written in his neat block letters. They were calculating how long they had to wait before I stopped being part of the picture. Angela cleared her throat. You'll be fine. There's that small pension, right? I tilted my head. Do you know what's in that pension? She blinked. Well, Mark said you mentioned it once. It's enough to get a place, isn't it? I smiled, not kindly. Then I stood up, slowly. I didn't say another word. I walked to the guest room, shut the door, and sat in silence for the next 3 hours. They thought I'd cry. They thought I'd beg. They thought I'd break. But here's what they didn't know. Richard and I had prepared everything, together. 2 years before he died, Richard had a scare. Not a heart attack, but a warning. What the doctor called a minor cardiac event. It changed him. He became cautious. We sat down one Sunday with tea and a manila folder and went through everything. Every account. Every asset. You sure you want to do this now? I'd asked. He gave me that crooked smile. Edie, it's always better to read the map before the storm. So we built a trust, put the house in it, the retirement savings, his business payouts, made me trustee. Everything jointly held with survivorship rights. He said, you'll be okay. Just don't tell Mark. He's not ready to understand this stuff. I didn't argue, but I took notes. And I kept that folder in the back of the hall closet, behind the old vacuum. When I moved into Mark's house, I brought it with me. They didn't notice. The morning after that dinner, I woke up at 5:40. The house was quiet. Mark had already left for the gym. Angela was asleep. I dressed, tied a scarf around my neck, and took my purse. The folder was inside. At 6:58 a.m., I was at the door of Ridgewood First National, waiting. When the doors opened, I walked in with the calm of a woman twice my size. I'd like to make some changes to my trust, I told the banker. Her name was Cassandra. Young, patient, eyeliner too bold for a Monday. She asked for my ID, my documents, and whether I'd like coffee. I said no, thank you. Then I got to work. By 9:17 a.m., every joint account was now solely in my name. The house deed reaffirmed. Access codes reset. Passwords changed. Beneficiaries reviewed. By 10 a.m., I was done. When I walked out into the sun, I felt something in my chest I hadn't felt in weeks. Clarity. Not joy. Not revenge. Just alignment. Like a bone clicking back into place. That night, I made dinner. For myself. Angela and Mark were out, probably assuming I'd be packing. They'd even left an empty cardboard box in the hallway, as if that would speed things along. I made lemon chicken, Richard's favorite. I sat at the table alone and ate in peace. And then I made a list. A short one. To do. Schedule locksmith for Ridgewood House. Notify Angela and Mark of vacate date. Hire moving service. Go home. Angela didn't flinch when I said I'd be leaving on Sunday. No surprise, no hesitation. She just rinsed her coffee mug in the sink and said, "Oh, that gives us time to get the carpets cleaned before the appraiser comes." Like I was old furniture that needed to be rolled out before the real adults made decisions. I stood there in the kitchen, still in my robe, the hem brushing my ankles, heart hammering behind my ribs. I had meant to tell her calmly, but hearing that word, appraiser, made my skin prickle. Appraiser, not after the holidays, not take your time. They were already setting up their new life, and I wasn't in it. I opened my purse, pulled out the manila envelope, and placed it on the kitchen counter. My hands were steady. She turned slightly. "What's that?" The deed, I said, to the Ridgewood house. Her brows lifted with the faintest hint of interest, as though I'd set down a grocery list. I don't think you understand how this works, she said, drying her hands with a dish towel. Mark's name is on that house. It was always supposed to pass to him. That's what Richard told him. I tilted my head. Did Richard tell you that? Or did Mark? She stared at me, unsure where this was going. I didn't blink. Because Richard and I set up a trust 2 years ago. The house, the retirement funds, everything is in my name now. There was a pause, a long one. She stepped closer, slowly. Her voice dropped. That can't be right. It is, I said. I spoke to the bank on Monday. All the paperwork's been updated, it's done. Angela's mouth tightened. She didn't speak. I watched her, calmly now. The silence stretched until I turned and walked away. I spent the afternoon upstairs, in the guest room, folding what little I'd brought. 2 cardigans, a half-empty bottle of lavender lotion, Richard's watch that still ticked softly in the drawer. I packed it all slowly into a small suitcase. That evening, they went out for dinner. I didn't ask where. Angela called up the stairs. We're heading out. Help yourself to whatever you'd like. She said it like a hotel receptionist. I waited until the front door clicked shut. Then I padded into the kitchen, barefoot, opened the fridge, and found the small bag of carrots I'd bought with my own money. I roasted them with rosemary and garlic and made lemon chicken, Richard's favourite. While it cooked, I cleaned the stovetop, humming quietly. The kitchen light buzzed faintly overhead, and I welcomed it. The silence, the small noises, the rhythm of being alone. When dinner was ready, I plated it neatly and sat down at their pristine table. A centerpiece of fake eucalyptus stared back at me. I moved it to the side. And I ate, slowly. Every bite tasted like something I'd lost and was just starting to remember. At midnight, I made my list. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. To do. Call locksmith. Notify utilities. Confirm moving service. Take back what's mine. The next morning, while Angela was dropping the kids off at preschool, I called the locksmith. I need the locks changed on Sunday, I said. Front and back doors. It's a return to residence. The man, Rico, asked for my address. When I gave it, there was a pause. That's a beautiful house, he said. My uncle used to mow lawns over there. I smiled faintly. It's still beautiful. It just needs new locks. That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up around 2 a.m., wrapped a shawl around my shoulders, and walked quietly through their living room. Their furniture all looked like it had been ordered from one catalogue. Grey tones, glass edges, no softness. Everything was sharp and curated. On a side table was a stack of design magazines with sticky tabs. Angela was planning renovations already. I stood by the window, looking out into the darkness, watching the faint flicker of the neighbour's porch light. And I whispered, "You almost let them erase you, Edith." Friday came. Mark got home late and barely said a word to me. I knew Angela had told him. Saturday morning, I caught him standing at the kitchen island, scrolling through his phone, jaw tight. "I'm moving tomorrow," I said calmly. He looked up. "Mom." "I'm not discussing it, Mark. I just want to let you know I've arranged for movers, and the locks will be changed after I arrive." He didn't respond right away. Then, "You should have told us." "I did," I said. "You just didn't want to hear it." He muttered something under his breath and walked out the back door. Sunday morning arrived crisp and cloudless. Ridgewood looked like it always did in spring, bright, green, with the smell of fresh mulch and wet sidewalks. I arrived just before 8 a.m. in a taxi. The driver, a cheerful woman named Marcia, helped me with the suitcase and asked, "You going home?" "Yes," I said, "I am." The house looked smaller than I remembered and older, but it looked real, honest. By 9:30, the movers had brought in my boxes. Not many. Just what I'd taken from their guest room and what little Richard and I had stored in the garage before everything froze in time. At 10:55, the locksmith pulled up. Young guy, early 30s. He smiled when I greeted him. "Beautiful door," he said, running his hand along the frame. "They don't make these anymore." "They don't make women like me anymore either," I said dryly. He laughed. The whole job took 35 minutes. He handed me the new keys. "You're all set, Ms. Hargrove." "Thank you, Rico." I closed the front door, locked it, turned, and stood in the hallway for a long moment, listening. The silence was rich, thick, not lonely, just full. I made a cup of tea, walked into the living room, and opened the windows. Outside, the breeze stirred the trees. Inside, the air shifted, gently, like the house exhaled. That night, I did the one thing I hadn't dared since Richard passed. I opened his closet. His sweaters still smelled faintly like cedar. His shoes were lined up neatly, as if he might come back and slip them on. I didn't cry. I just sat down on the bed and held one of his cardigans. Then I folded it, slowly, and placed it beside mine. The next day, Mark called. I let it ring. He called again an hour later, left a voicemail. "Mom, what the hell did you do? We were supposed to be handling this together. You can't just... I mean, it wasn't supposed to go like this." I didn't reply. Later that day, I found a letter from a real estate agent in the mail, addressed to the estate of Richard Hargrove. They'd started the paperwork to sell the house, probably before the funeral. I poured myself a glass of water, sat on the porch, and laughed. A small, humorless sound. I tore the letter into strips, let them fall into the bin. Over the next week, I slowly re-inhabited the space. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just drawer by drawer. I washed the curtains, repaired a wobbly table leg, unpacked the sewing machine. I hadn't touched it in years. One morning, while clearing out a shelf in the attic, I found a cardboard box I'd forgotten. It was labeled in Richard's handwriting, Edie's Projects. Inside were fabric swatches, faded sketches, a notebook filled with ideas for handmade pillows and throws. Designs I'd made in my early 40s, back when I still believed I might start something of my own. One note made me pause. What if it's not too late? I sat on the attic floor, knees aching, light streaming through the dusty window, and felt something warm flicker in my chest. I could still do this. Not big, not flashy, but something. The next morning, I took the bus to the Ridgewood Community Arts Center. There was a flyer in the window. Spring Makers Market, applications due Friday. I walked inside. A young woman at the front desk smiled. "Can I help you?" "Yes," I said, clearing my throat. "I'd like to apply." "To be a vendor?" "Yes." She blinked, surprised. "That's great. Do you have a business name?" I hesitated, then smiled. Edie's Comforts. I didn't expect much from the market. I brought a folding table from the garage, covered it with one of Richard's old checked tablecloths, and laid out 4 pillow covers I'd sewn that week. The stitches weren't perfect. My hands ached more than they used to. But the fabrics were soft, warm, the kind of things people don't buy for looks, but for comfort. The Ridgewood Spring Makers Market was held behind the old community centre, on a patch of grass lined with white tents. Some vendors had elaborate displays, chalkboards, bunting, even twinkle lights. Mine looked like a garage sale, but I stood there anyway. I stood tall. A little girl with glitter sneakers ran past my table and stopped short. "These feel like my Nana's house," she said, rubbing one of the pillows against her cheek. Her mother smiled at me. "Do you sell online?" "Not yet," I said, laughing. By midday, I'd sold 2 covers and a set of pot holders I'd made from leftover scraps. One woman bought a pillow for her mother in assisted living. "She just misses something real," she said. That word, real, stayed with me. It felt like the opposite of Angela. When I got home that evening, I found an envelope tucked under the mat. My name was scrawled across the front in rushed, angry pen, Mark's handwriting. I opened it slowly, my hands already bracing for what I knew I'd find. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "I don't understand how you can be this cruel. You're our mother. You're supposed to help us." Angela's furious. "The kids miss you. I thought we were family." There was no signature. I sat on the porch and read it 3 times. Then I folded it in half and tucked it into a drawer with the old gas bills. 2 days later, Danny called. Danny, my younger son, the one who'd moved to Portland years ago with his boyfriend and a rescue dog that only had one eye. He hadn't come to the funeral, said flights were expensive and his studio was behind on deadlines. I hadn't argued. But now, his voice was soft, careful. "Hey, Mom, heard things got tense with Mark?" I didn't answer right away. He continued. "He called me last week, said you'd gone full steel spine and kicked them out of your life." I snorted. "Funny, I don't recall throwing anyone out." "That's what I said," Danny replied. We talked for almost an hour, about nothing and everything. He told me about a new ceramic line he was launching, and I told him about the market. "Edie's Comforts?" he said. "That's cute, kinda badass." "I wasn't going for badass," I laughed, "but I'll take it." Before he hung up, he said quietly, "I'm proud of you, Mom. Seriously, you did what you had to do." I didn't cry, but I came close. The next week, I was invited to join a local craft circle. A woman named Joyce had seen my booth and asked if I'd consider meeting some other stubborn older women with good hands and better stories. I said yes. We met at the library's community room on Wednesdays. 10 women, all over 60, sat in a loose circle, needles in hand, gossip in the air. They were fierce and warm and unapologetically themselves. One had beaten breast cancer twice. Another had lost her husband in '98 and never remarried. "Because I finally had the bed to myself." We stitched. We laughed. And slowly, I stitched myself back together. One afternoon, I caught myself humming while hemming a piece of muslin. The sun poured through the kitchen window, lighting the worn tile and faded wallpaper. I didn't care that it was old. It was mine. The doorbell rang around 3 p.m. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and answered it, half expecting a delivery. It was Angela. She stood there in a crisp blazer, a tablet tucked under one arm, her expression neutral. "Hi," she said. I waited. She cleared her throat. "I was hoping we could talk." I nodded and opened the door wider. She didn't step in, just stood in the foyer, scanning the house like it was unfamiliar. "Nice curtains," she said absently. "You always liked blue." I said nothing. She glanced down, exhaled. "Look, Edith, I know things got strained, and I know you probably feel like we pushed you out." "You did push me out," I said. She blinked. I didn't raise my voice. I just let the truth sit between us. She looked down again. "It wasn't personal." "It always is," I said, "when it's your home, your life." We stood in silence. Finally, she said, "Mark misses you." I gave her a long look. "Mark made a choice, and he'll have to live with it." She flinched, but nodded. Before she left, she paused on the porch. I hope you're okay. I am, I said. More than I've been in a long time. She didn't smile, just walked back to her car, and I closed the door. The next craft market was bigger. I'd sewn 5 new quilted throws, added a small basket of lavender sachets, and printed little cards with my name and phone number. 2 women from the church bought sets. One asked if I could teach her granddaughter to sew. By the end of the day, I was tired, truly tired, but full in a way I hadn't felt since before Richard's heart gave out. As I packed up, Joyce appeared with a to-go cup of tea. You're a hit, Edie, she said, clinking her cup to mine. Told you Ridgewood still had room for good hands. Not sure it's the hands, I said. Might be the spine. She laughed. That too. That night, I stood in the doorway of the bedroom, staring at the photo of Richard on my dresser. His smile was slightly crooked in that shot, taken the summer we fixed the deck. He had a hammer in one hand and a popsicle in the other. I'm okay, I whispered. I miss you, but I'm okay. I lit a candle and went to bed without grief sitting on my chest. 3 weeks later, Danny showed up unannounced. He pulled into the driveway in a rented car, wearing a denim jacket, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. I figured it was time I showed up. I hugged him so tightly he winced. We spent the weekend cooking, sewing, laughing. He helped me set up an Instagram page for Edie's Comforts, even took pictures of my booth and the old sewing machine. This one looks like a badass elders battle station, he said. I rolled my eyes. That's the idea. Before he left, he kissed my cheek. Dad would be proud of you. I hope so, I said softly. He would, Danny said, and honestly, so am I. The day the first online order came in, I nearly dropped my tea. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon. I had just finished ironing 3 linen pillowcases and was about to sit down with a biscuit and a mystery novel when my phone buzzed. Notification, 1 new order, Edie's Comforts. I blinked at the screen. Thought it might be a scam. But there it was. A real name, a real address. Someone from Ohio had ordered 2 quilted lavender sachets and a throw blanket I'd stitched with an old daisy print backing from Richard's mother's collection. My hands shook as I tapped through the order. I sat down hard in the kitchen chair, phone still in hand. For a full minute I couldn't move. Then I laughed, loud, giddy, startled. This was real. Someone wanted something I made. Not out of pity. Not out of obligation. Out of want. Over the next few weeks, orders trickled in. A sachet here, a pillow cover there. Some came from people in town, some from states I hadn't visited in decades. I wrote handwritten thank you notes with everyone. Folded the tissue paper just right. Spritzed the box interiors with a tiny bit of lemon balm. The small things mattered. I was never a businesswoman in the traditional sense, but I'd always known how to care for details. And this? This was mine. Built not from spite, but from space. The space they gave me when they told me to leave. In late May, I was invited to speak at the Ridgewood Seniors Circle. Just a 15-minute talk about sewing and memory. I almost said no. Then I thought of all the women I'd watched, like me, shrinking into themselves after loss. I wrote the talk on a yellow legal pad, practiced twice, wore my good blouse. When I stood up in front of the circle that Wednesday morning, I saw 12 faces looking back. Soft, weathered, hopeful. I didn't plan to start over at 68, I began. But life doesn't ask for your permission. It just hands you a box and says, pack up or stay behind. A few women nodded. One blinked quickly. I was told I wasn't needed anymore, that my chapter was over. But here's the thing about stories. I paused. You don't need permission to start a new one. You just need a sentence. When I finished, they clapped, quietly, but with real warmth. One woman came up after and whispered, "Thank you. I've been living like a guest in my daughter's house for 2 years." I took her hand. "You're not a guest. You're the woman who built the home." June brought warm nights and fireflies blinking in the hedges again. I started sleeping with the windows open. Something Richard had hated. He always claimed he could hear raccoons plotting outside. Now, the night breeze was mine. The quiet no longer felt like absence. It felt like breathing room. I even started writing down memories. Nothing fancy, just pages in a notebook. Stories about my grandmother's garden, the first quilt I ever made, the night Richard forgot our anniversary and brought me home a bag of frozen peas instead of roses. Funny how those memories feel more golden now. Not because they were perfect, because they were ours. One morning around midsummer, Mark came by. No warning, no text. I heard his car in the driveway and saw him through the front window, standing awkwardly at the steps, shoulders slightly hunched. I opened the door before he knocked. "Hi, Mom." "Mark." He looked older, more tired, a little heavier in the face. "I was just in the area. Thought maybe we could talk." I paused, then stepped aside. "Come in." He glanced around as if expecting the house to look wildly different. But it didn't. It just looked more like me again. "I see you took down the beige curtains," he said. I gave a small smile. They never suited the light. We sat in the kitchen. I made tea. He didn't ask for sugar, but I added 1 cube anyway, out of habit. For a while, we didn't speak. Then he said quietly, "Angela and we've been having some trouble." I nodded, but didn't respond. "She thinks I was weak, that I should have, I don't know, stood up for her more." I stirred my tea. "She was cruel, Mark." "I know." Silence. "I should have said something," he continued. "Back when she told you to pack, I should have told her to stop." "You didn't." "I know." Another pause. He rubbed his hands together. "I guess I thought you'd forgive me, no matter what." I looked at him, really looked. My son. A man now. Not the boy who used to fall asleep on my lap during thunderstorms. Not the teenager who borrowed my car and dented the bumper. A grown man with pride and shame and regret. "I do forgive you," I said, "but I don't forget. And I don't come back to places that don't welcome me." He looked up, eyes glassy. "I miss you," he said. "I miss the version of you that saw me," I replied. His face crumpled slightly. "I'm trying, Mom." I nodded. "Then keep trying." When he left, I didn't cry. I didn't feel vindicated. Just full. Some doors stay closed. Others creak open. That's enough. By late August, Edie's Comforts was turning into more than a hobby. I got a small feature in the local paper. "Quilts of Quiet Resistance," they called it. A retired widow rebuilding a life, one stitch at a time. Joyce clipped the article and framed it for me. "Put this by your booth," she said. "So people know they're buying strength, not just fabric." I laughed. "That'll cost extra." At the Full Market, a college student bought a patchwork bag and told me she was going to take it to Paris. "I hope it holds up," I joked. She grinned. "I don't care. It feels like home." On what would have been Richard's birthday, I cooked his favorite meal, lemon chicken, of course, and set a second plate across from mine. I didn't light a candle, didn't say a prayer, just ate, remembered, smiled. Grief isn't something you get over. It's something you carry differently with time, like a bag that used to be too heavy to lift and now fits in the crook of your elbow. That winter, I received a letter. Handwritten, mailed from the next town over. It was from a woman named Lorraine. She'd read the article in the paper and said it gave her courage to leave her son's house after being gently erased for 2 years. She ended her letter with, "I thought I was being ungrateful. But now I realize I was just being erased too quietly to notice. Thank you for reminding me who I used to be." I placed the letter in a box I'd started keeping, letters I never expected. There were 6 now, and so here I am, 69, widowed, owner of a small online shop, maker of things that bring people comfort. I host tea on Sundays now, just for a few women from the craft circle. We sit around the kitchen table with mismatched mugs and talk about our first kisses, our stupid sons, the best roast chicken we ever made. No one raises their voice. No one tells me to pack. One day, someone asked if I ever think about moving somewhere new. I smiled and said, I already did. I moved back to myself. They laughed, but I meant it. This house has cracks. So do I. But it holds me. And I hold me now too. I don't need revenge. I don't need them to beg for forgiveness. I just need mornings like this. Quiet, warm, filled with the scent of lavender and thread. They told me to pack my bags after the funeral. So I did. But I packed the deed. I packed my name. I packed every bit of self-worth I'd hidden behind casseroles and silence. And I came home. To myself. To a life no one else could erase.